Later.
Yeah, something that we know.
Later.
Would you like this?
Oh, okay.
Let's go.
Goodbye, yeah.
What was that? Move backward. Even as a figure it out. It's the process, the thinking of it. And now
Yes, I'm starting to shoot. I can't talk right now. Yeah. In about an hour, I'll speak English, okay? I'll be like
Okay, Bruchim Habayim to starting again. Right? Starting again. Bereishit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And I'm sure that Barak remembers the story.
you know, let's start off with
Gewalt in the beginning. And I'm sure Barak remembers the story, but Shlomo was once sitting on a plane, always sitting on a plane, right? Once, yeah. And he got into a conversation with the man sitting next to him, and he was telling Shlomo about how he and about another 30 families, they had broken away from their church, and they started a new congregation because they really wanted to pray, they really wanted to study. And they were having like a very nice conversation, and the plane was just about to land, and if someone felt like he'd like to share something with this man. So he had an Ishbitzer Sefer with him, and Beis Yaakov, I think. And the Tikkunei Zohar, one of the first books of the Zohar, it starts off with a question as to why does the Torah tell us Bereshit bara Elokim, right? You know that the principle is that there's nothing redundant or unnecessary in the Torah. We learn many halachot even from an extra letter or from the absence of a letter. And so why does it need to say that in the beginning God created heaven and earth? It should just say God created heaven and earth. And if anybody would ask, when did God do that? You would just say, call Aryeh, and he'll tell you. And they'll call up Aryeh. And Aryeh is going to say, like, well, something wrong with you? When do you think God created heaven and earth? Obviously, in the beginning, right? So why does it have to say in the beginning? So apparently the Tikkunei Zohar consists of 70 lessons just on that question, on the word Bereishit.
Which one?
Tikkunei Zohar. And so the Ishbitzer explains as follows. He says that Bereshit bara Elokim, God created all the beginnings. In other words, God put the beginning into creation, meaning to say, for example, let's say sometimes you're not in a great mood and you go out for a walk in the woods. And you come back 15 minutes later, nothing's changed. You've got the same issues that you have to deal with, right? But you feel so much better. You feel refreshed. You feel that whatever you thought was instrumental before, it's going to be okay. Just that it's going to be okay. Use the book with them. No, you need the book. We're going to look inside. Okay. Put it over here. Put it over here. So you feel like you feel refreshed. You feel like you can start again. So how come? Because Bereshit bara Elokim, God put the Bereshit, God put the beginning into the creation.
Created beginnings.
Created beginnings. A couple of years later, Rav Shlomo was in this, and then the plane landed. They said goodbye. A couple of years later, Rav Shlomo was in the same city, giving a concert. And there was this couple sitting at the front with a couple of children. Something very special about them at the intermission. They came up to him, and the woman says to Rav Shlomo, she says, I wonder if you remember my husband. He was on a plane with you a couple of years ago, and you shared a teaching with him from a rabbi that lived 150 years ago about starting again. Of course, Rav Shlomo remembered. And she says to him, I want you to know that that teaching saved his life. Because at the time that you met him, he was a multimillionaire. And then the wheel of fortune turned, and he lost all his money, and he was really down, and he decided that he was going to, how do they say in Japanese, harakiri. He was going to take his life. And he was a very organized man. He had planned it for a certain night of the week at 7:30. By 7:25, he had taken care of all of his affairs, everything was arranged. But he was like a shtickle yeke. 7:30 was 7:30, he wasn't going to do it at 7:25. And so he had 5 minutes left to, so to speak, to kill, And he always had a Bible on his desk because he was a religious man. So he decided to take another look in the Bible, and he just flipped it open, and staring in his face was, "In the beginning, God created." And the teaching that Reb Shlomo shared with him came right back to him. And he closed the Bible and he went down to his wife and he says, I met this rabbi on the plane who shared a teaching with me about in the beginning, and will you help me get started again? And that saved his life. Okay. So, in the beginning, and so Bereishit bara Elokim, right, the very first verse, we're all there together. In the beginning, God created et hashamayim v'et haaretz. He created heaven and earth. So Rav Shlomo brings the teaching, very interesting teaching. Look at the next verse. It says, "Haaretz hayta tohu vavohu." Earth was this mass of confusion. V'choshech al pnei tahom. There was darkness over the firmament. Like that word, firmament. V'ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. You don't have it?
Yes.
Did I give him the wrong book?
Okay.
The bottom under the line is Rashi. Right. Okay. V'ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. So the question that's asked is, where's the water from? It didn't say anything yet about the creation of water. Right? Bereishit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, heaven and earth. There's been no mention of water. And how come it doesn't tell us God created heaven and earth and water or something like that? It's okay. So the simple pshat is that when you say heaven and earth, you're talking about everything on earth, including the water, right? But he brings an interesting teaching from the Zohar. Right? If you take any two things and put them together, like the one thing I remember from the year that we studied chemistry, NaCl. Anybody know what NaCl is? We were all good students like me. Sodium chloride, which is what? Salt. Very good. So you have the sodium and you have the chloride. What about when you put 2 drops of water together? Can you distinguish the 2 drops? No, it becomes one, right? So in other words, water has some kind of quality, a pre-creation quality that everything else does not have. Okay. Now you're going to say, okay, it's true, but oil also, etc., right? But the liquids, water is always flowing, and water is always symbolic of milmala lamata, from above coming down to us. So water, that's why the rabbis say ein mayim el Torah. So water is symbolizing that which is connecting us to the higher worlds as well. So water is like its own type of creation, and it's not like the rest of heaven and earth, where it's hard to achieve an actual unity between two separate things. Whereas water still has that quality of unity. Okay. So when we say Bereishit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, it also means to say that that the creation is such that you have the ability to connect, to be very, very earthy, and you also have the ability that even while here on earth, you have the ability to connect to a higher realm of existence, right? Now, I didn't get to look at it again today yet, but I mean to read it over, but and I just saw that. So then you have the first characters in the Torah are Adam and Chava, Cain and Hevel, right? And right away there's problems. Right away there's problems. Right away, right? You know, and I sort of have yet to meet a person who never played this game. Did you ever play broken telephone when you were a kid? Now that, what do they call it? Do they call it broken telephone in England? What?
Chinese whispers.
Chinese whispers. You know the game, right? That's the first story of the Torah. Between Adam and Eve. It's like Hashem gives Adam a message, and he already corrupts the message, and he tells her that you can't touch the tree. Hashem never said you can't touch the tree, right? And that brings down, that messes everything up already, right? And then you have Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel. And by the way, if you've never seen it, you must have seen it. The Shlomo's thing. Have you seen it online? It's on YouTube. Look it up. The tragedy of Cain and Abel. Did you ever see it? Shlomo Karabach? No?
No, I don't think I know.
I don't think I've seen it.
Huh?
I don't think I've seen it.
So I got to show it to you guys before we go tonight. Okay, I'll put it on, and it'll get the broadcast. So everybody remembers. Rav Shtansel says everybody remembers Cain as the one who murdered his brother, right? But Cain and Hevel are representing two different types of personalities. And he says that over the generations, there have been, the Kabbalists, pointed out that many of the great leaders of the Jewish people, they say that their souls were of the Cain. They had the aspect of Cain. Cain was the first person to build a city, right? He was a doer. His grandchildren also did things. And whereas Adam, he lived for 930 years, and the Torah doesn't tell us about anything that he actually did, besides having children. But the Torah doesn't tell us, about any of his accomplishments. But Cain actually accomplished, right? So, meaning to say that if you see somebody with a negative quality, don't write them off. That person with that negative quality might be the biggest achiever, or possibly could possibly be the biggest achiever. Teacher goes into a classroom and he encounters a kid, like we know, who's busy entertaining the class with his shtick, because he can't sit still. That kid, instead of pushing him out because he's not sitting quietly and not behaving quietly and so on, that kid could very well be the kid with the most potential and the one who's going to achieve the most, right? And so the real trick is like I was sharing with Miriam tonight, to take the negative quality and to channel it in the right direction and make it into something beautiful. Okay. to transform it. And this is one of the basic teachings of of the Baal Shem Tov. There's a famous story about Reb Shmuel Munkes, which I'll tell you in a minute, the Chassid of Dal Rebbe. Shmuel Munkes, like I've said many times, he was one Chassid I would really love to meet. He'd probably beat me up as soon as he'd see me, but Shmuel Munkes shows up by the Alter Rebbe, Balatanya, for the first time one night, and he knocks on the door, and the Alter Rebbe doesn't open the door. He just says, "Who's there?" He says, "It's Shmuel." He says, "What do you want?" So he says, "I want to stay here in your house tonight." The Alter Rebbe says, "You can't stay here. Go to the inn." He says, "I don't want to go to the inn." He says, "Go to the inn, or else I'm going to call my goy and he'll throw you out." And Shmuel says to the Alter Rebbe, "My goy is bigger than your goy." So the Alter Rebbe opened up the door, and he became like the closest chassid of the Alter Rebbe, or one of the closest, whatever. I don't know, closest or not closest. So the story is that the Hasidim were having a Farbrengen, and the butcher had contributed a plate of roasted chicken lungs or chicken hearts, whatever it is. The kind of stuff that you can eat over here on a grippers there by Rav Yerushalmi. You ever eat it? You know,
What's it called?
the restaurant?
Yeah.
Down here, something Yerushalmi. It's right just down the street.
Yeah, I'll leave it down the street and you'll smell it.
And go down to the left, and you'll see a lineup of people standing there. Everything. They put everything in there: the chicken and the liver and the lungs and the heart and everything. Yeah. And in any case, so listen. Back when I was a kid, and my mother would buy a chicken, everything got eaten, even the skin off the feet. You know, it was like that's, you know. So in those days, it's unlike, you know, when you go into a Chabad house today, there's lots of food that if I bring in, there's lots to drink and so on. Back in those days, I remember back in Montreal, you know, it was not that many years after the war, the community was still quite poor. And a Farbrengen consisted of some schmaltz herring that smelled in the yeshiva all the way till Wednesday, and they would drink, like, you know, 96 like 96 proof alcohol, no Glenfiddich, no Glenlivet, no nothing, none of that. It was, and there would be some simple crackers, and you'd see like a chassid taking a drink of the 96, and it was like, and they would then grab the pickle juice and drink some pickle juice as a chaser. Anyway, so when there was something special at it for Farbrengen, and especially like broiled chicken lungs or whatever, everybody knew because they smelled it, you know. And at every Farbrengen, they would always have one person would be in charge of dishing out the food ever so slowly, so that the Farbrengen should last. Do you know the story? No. So when you had like a choice delicacy, you would save it for last, you know. Keep the people at the Farbrengen. Anyway, the people started getting anxious, and they said, "Shmuel, come on, bring out those chicken lungs, you know." And soon. Come on, Shmuel. Anyway, finally he goes and gets the plate of the chicken lungs, and he starts to tease the whole crowd. He has the plate, and he sort of brings it up to somebody. Somebody is about to take from it, pulls the plate away, and he's dancing around the room, and he's like getting everybody good and riled up. And finally, like, you know, like they're so riled up, they're about to jump him. So he goes and takes the whole plate with the chicken lungs and smashes it into the garbage. literally smashes it into the garbage, and like in those days, garbage was garbage, right? So now they're really mad at him. So they gave him a mishkanta. You know what a mishkanta is? You know what a mishkanta is? You know, come on.
They got cursed.
No. You're in real estate. A mishkanta is a mortgage. Right? How does a mortgage work? It's set up in such a way to make sure that you're going to get your money back, right?
Right.
Well, a mishkanta was a special Hasidic treatment to make sure that this guy was never going to do this again. So they put him on the table, and the whole shul lined up, and they let him have it. He didn't say a word. They finished giving him the mishkanta. The butcher comes running in. Where are those chicken lungs? And somebody says, this crazy guy threw them in the garbage. He says he threw them in the garbage. Phew. I just found out they were all treif. They weren't kosher. So now they said, oh, Shmuel, the Pravos Mafsim, you're doing miraculous deeds. And they gave him another mishkanta. Because in the Lubavitch, only the Rebbe is allowed to do something like that. But this time it was only the older Hasidim that gave him the mishkanta. And then when they finished it, they said, now you're going to tell us, how did you know it wasn't kosher? And if you don't tell us, you're getting another mishkanta. So he told them the story about how he met the Alter Rebbe the first time. And when the Alter Rebbe finally let him into his house, so the Alter Rebbe says, so what did you want? So he says, I have a flaming, passionate Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination, and I'm not able to control it. I want you to please take away my Yetzer Hara. And the Alter Rebbe said to him, the Alter Rebbe said to me, I bless you that your Yetzer Hara should not be as fiery as it usually is, but I'm not going to take it away from you because you need it to serve Hashem. So he says, and the Alter Rebbe's blessing actually worked. But when I picked up that plate of chicken lungs, it was back in full force. So I knew that there was something wrong with these chicken lungs. So the idea is that when confronted with your evil inclination, it's not meant. You're not meant to strangle it. In other words, like the Gemara says that the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, the people, the rabbis of the Great Assembly, they prayed to God to remove our attraction to idolatry, and which was fierce. Okay. And Hashem accepted that prayer, and they realized, wow, God accepted this prayer. So they went ahead and they said, can you also take away our attraction to for sexual desires? And then they went around and they saw that not even the chickens stopped laying eggs. And they realized that the world wouldn't exist without it. So that request they took back. So, and I imagine that Rav Daniel Katz must have been speaking about something along these lines the other night that you were there. But basically, the Baal Shem Tov speaks about fall in love, fall in fear, right? So you're walking along the street and all of a sudden this fear overcomes you. Like I remember once it happened to me. I was walking Shabbos afternoon to shul. I was about 18 years old, and like all of a sudden I was viciously attacked by two tiny chihuahuas. They came they came charging out from behind the bushes, like I was just daydreaming, and I literally jumped into the street. It's a good thing there were no cars coming by. I remember I jumped from the sidewalk into the middle of the street. And I said, "Oh, two little chihuahuas, get out of here," you know? So what are you supposed to do with that? What are you supposed to do with that, right? So you can say, "Oh, so stupid that I got scared of two little chihuahuas," right? But the fact is that I was at that moment inspired with fear. So Baal Shem Tov says, don't strangle the emotion. Now that you've had this emotion, take it and use it, take ownership of it and use it the next time that you're thinking of doing a transgression, the next time that you're about to speak Lashon Hara, the next time that you're about to do something inappropriate. Remember what this feeling was like and call it up so that you don't do the negative thing, right? In other words, use that fear as a motivator to prevent you from doing something negative, okay? Or, for example, you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you're tremendously attracted to something that's not appropriate for you. Don't strangle the feeling of the love. Say, "Oh, this is how I would like to feel the next time I have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, the next time I have an opportunity to give tzedakah, the next time I have an opportunity to learn some Torah. Let me have that same strong attraction." Okay, so we're talking about basically elevation and transformation. Okay, so Cain is an aggressive neshama, right? So if you happen to be an aggressive type of person, fine. Use your aggression in a positive way. If you're the kind of person that can't sit in the classroom and tolerate the prison of the classroom, so you learn to use your intolerance in a positive way. Sounds very Boulder-like, yeah? Why are you laughing, Alex? It's sort of similar to Walnut Creek. Have you been to Boulder?
Nope.
You don't have to go, just get a Land's End catalog.
Just Google satellite.
Huh?
Google Earth. That's enough.
Just the paragraph and stuff.
Visit any Whole Foods parking lot. There's the whole Boulder. Right. Anyway, so, like in other words, use your aggression to do something positive. There's something called righteous indignation. Right? Everybody knows what that means?
No.
No? What does it mean? You didn't say no, so it means you know.
No, you say.
It means that you think that you're right about something that you know. So
No. What's righteous? Righteous indignation.
Done something.
When you're speaking from the eye, right? The it.
No, that kind of language, I don't know what you mean, but
yeah.
righteous indignation is that you're indignant about something for a righteous reason.
It's indignant.
What's
Like
a synonym of indignant?
Insistent.
Totally
so-
insisting and demanding and so on.
Yeah, with anger. A little bit.
And with anger, okay? So, for example, righteous indignation is usually when you get angry for the wrong reasons. Righteous indignation is, let's say, for example, you hear that there's somebody on the block that's abusing kids, right? So if you have the attribute of righteous indignation, you're going to go out and do something about it. Okay, that's righteous indignation. So it's the same attribute as anger, but it's being used for a righteous purpose. Okay. It's
It says a reactive emotion of anger over perceived mistreatment, insult, or malice. It is akin to what is called a sense of injustice.
Right. Okay. In other words, like I've given this example a number of times. Like people say, "Oh, this is a good city to live in." Why? Because it has only an 8% crime rate or 10% crime rate, right, compared to other cities. If you would have righteous indignation, you would say, "What's so good about 8% crime rate? There shouldn't be any." And you would do something about it, right? Instead of building what do you call those communities, Ari, with the walls around it, gated communities or something like that, right? That's what happens. That's what people are doing in America already now, 20, 30 years, right? They build communities and there's like a wall around it, and you need to have you've seen such places. You need to have a password to get through the gates, etc.
It's just like Jerusalem, like the old city.
Well, that's right. Like all cities, like in the old days, like that's how you would build a wall around your city to protect yourself, right? But if we would have righteous indignation, we would say, no, we don't want any crime rate. We don't want any crime rate whatsoever. Right? So again, you need that motivating anger to make you do something about it. So anger in itself is not. It's even though it's like one of those emotions that the Talmud says, like really, really stay away from. Kol hako'es kilu aved avodah zara. If you lose your temper, it's as if you're worshiping an idol, the idol being yourself. But still, if you have that intolerance, like my father, Olav Shalom had a certain. He was blessed with a certain degree of that indignation. In shul, if he'd see somebody mistreating somebody else, he didn't sit quietly and keep his mouth shut, regardless of who it was. He intervened. And then when I became a negotiator for the teachers union, he said to me, "Why do you have to do that?" I said, "I guess because I'm your son, But it's you have it all the time in all organizations. And that's the quality of Kayin, believe it or not. Hevel is a much more passive, relaxed, sympathetic person. That's for this morning's classes and for now. Okay, Hevel is a much more passive, sympathetic type of personality, and if you skip to verse to the end of the story of creation, right, which is the same chapter. It's actually chapter 2, and you're familiar with this verse, right? So look at the beginning of chapter 2. Vayechulu hashamayim, we say this every Friday night in Kiddush. Vayechulu hashamayim v'ha'aretz b'chol tzva'am. The heavens and the earth and all their hosts were completed. Vayechal Elokim b'yom hashvi'i melachto asher asa. And God completed on the seventh day all the work that he had done. Vayishbot b'yom hashvi'i, he rested on the seventh day, mikol melachto asher asa, from all the work that he had done. Vayivarech Elokim et yom hashvi'i, God blessed the seventh day, vayikadesh oto, he sanctified it, Kivosh Shabbat Mikol Malachto, because on that day he rested from all his work, Asher Bara Elokim La'asot, that God had created, La'asot, translate La'asot, to do. Contradiction. You just said God finished everything. In the very end of the verses, it said, for all that God created, La'asot, right? So the rabbis say that God didn't put us into a finished, complete world. He put us into a world in which we would have to do things
To complete.
to complete. Right? We're here la'asot. Right? I was once at a Farbrengen when I was still a student in yeshiva with Dr. Irving Block. Have you heard of Dr. Irving Block? Dr. Irving Block was a professor of philosophy, a Harvard-trained philosopher. He was a professor at the University of Western Ontario. When he first came to the Rebbe actually very much encouraged him to finish his doctorate. He wanted to get out of it, you know. The Rebbe told him, no, your work is to be an academic, and you're gonna have a lot more influence as an academic. So he was Farbrengen with us in the yeshiva. And so you notice, so the serpent gets Chava to eat from the tree of knowledge, and then she gives some of it to Adam. And then each one of them gets cursed, right? Adam has to toil, by the sweat of thy brow we will eat bread, and the earth will sprout kots v'dagdav, thorny bushes, etc., right? You're going to have to constantly do the weeding and so on. And then Chava gets her curse, and the serpent gets his curse. And what is the serpent's curse? The serpent's curse is that he's going to crawl on his belly, right? So that means that beforehand this serpent moved about upright, and now it was going to be crawling on his belly, right? What's the difference between upright and being on your belly? Well, when you're upright, your head is on top and your bottom is on the bottom. If you're crawling on your belly, your head and your bottom are on the same level. So he says to us, if I bring in, and what is everybody dreaming about going to the Bahamas so you can put your head and your bottom on the same level, right? You understand? This world is la'asot. It's not. We're not here to, you know, as much as our culture, like, you know, advertises this and suggests that the ultimate sign of achievement is that you can go and just spread yourself out and do nothing, right? Because you've already achieved. The reality is la'asot, to continue doing. And everybody knows. You can watch it on Chabad.org. One night, Judy and I were watching the Rebbe's 80th birthday for Farbrengen. The Farbrengen started at 11 o'clock at night, and it went till 6 o'clock in the morning. The video is condensed into an hour and 10 minutes or so. Okay, you see the Rebbe at 6 o'clock in the morning is as fresh as he was at 11 o'clock at night. This is at age 80. And the last 2 hours of the Farbrengen, he was giving everybody a birthday gift from himself to everyone else, this big edition of the Tanya. And for 2 hours, and there were thousands of people there, so for 2 hours he's picking up a heavy Tanya, here, the next person, the next person, the next person. And he wasn't tiring. Okay. Shlomo Karlebach used to come to Montreal. He'd be with us for 24 hours or 36 hours. By the time he left, we were exhausted. and he'd go on to the next city for 24 to 36 hours, and they would get exhausted. And then he'd go to the next city, like three, 4 cities in a week, okay? So how does that work? And the answer is that if you're in the mind space of I'm here to do, if you're connected with your neshama, I'm here to do, I'm here to accomplish, I'm here to make something happen, then the body follows the soul rather than the soul being schlepped around by the body. If your consciousness is primarily the consciousness of the body, then the body does its thing, right? Well, one of the expressions I hear the kids, the Israelis using, "en li koach." You hear it often enough?
No.
Huh? Like, you know, when I would say to my kids, or like, you know, to my students, I want you to do this. Oh, en li koach. You know, in your house they don't. In your house they don't
No
dare.
Bali. That's
No bali. I don't feel like it. En li koach. I don't have the energy to do it. It basically means I don't feel like doing it. But when you feel like doing something, you have the energy. If you don't feel like doing something, you don't have the energy, right? That's the way it goes. Okay. So we need to have that balance between, if you're a kind personality, great. Just learn how to use it in the right way. Okay. Okay. So I was learning with Miriam a little bit tonight, and I want to share this because it relates to this. In the olden days, Chos and Kala would get married. They barely knew each other, and they would spend the first 7 days alone together in whatever they were living in, hut, apartment, or whatever it was. Most people I've asked nowadays if they can imagine being together with one person for 7 days without going anywhere else, without any distractions, without any internet. I've yet to meet, besides this person here, but who thinks it's a great idea. Most people say, "Are you kidding? 7 days? Can't imagine, right?" So here's Chassan and Kala, they're getting married, and the first 7 days they're spending together alone, right? People are bringing them food, and the friends are playing music outside, or whatever. But basically, it's like, you two guys, you got a bond now for the next 7 days. Right? Now, how are they going to do that? You know, within a period of 7 days, you're going to see each other's flaws, and so what are you going to do? You're going to say, "Mommy, take me home." I heard about this. I don't know if it's true or not, but in Williamsburg, you know, Sutner town, this Chassan and Kala were so young, and the poor Kala, she got the flu, and his mother came and took him home. So he shouldn't catch a cold from his wife. Once there was a bar mitzvah in Eifruf on the same Shabbos in Satmar, and they asked the Rebbe who should be called up for the maftir, and the Rebbe said, "Who's older?" And I think, okay, so it's very possibly true, you know. Anyway, so so the
People have late bar mitzvahs.
huh?
People have late bar mitzvahs.
Late bar mitzvahs. No, back in not so long ago in history, girls would get married at a very young age. In any case, without getting into that. So how do you do that? how do you spend 7 days with somebody who's going to be your life partner and see their flaws, and she sees your flaws, and you come out of that tent, instead of being bandaged up, you come out like, like, oh, everything's beautiful. And the answer is that, and the parable that I remember from childhood is the parable of this king who had a chest of precious gems, and he had a very, very fine appreciation, very sophisticated appreciation for precious gems. And every day he would spend like 10, 15 minutes a day, like, just relaxing and taking out his precious gems and enjoying them and so on. And he had this diamond, which was the most beautiful diamond in the world. And one day when he put it back into the chest, he wasn't perfectly careful. And what ended up is that it got scratched by another diamond. The next day he takes it out, and lo and behold, this beautiful diamond has the scratch on it. And as you know, obviously, right, there goes its value. So he called in all the craftspeople, and they're looking at it, and this one is suggesting that we can make 2 beautiful diamonds out of it. This one had other suggestions, repolish it, but whatever it was not going to be as beautiful as it was before. And this one young craftsman comes along and he says, let me do something with it. And the king gave it to him, and he comes back the next day, and where the scratch was, he had engraved a beautiful rose. He saw that scratch mark as the beginning of a beautiful rose. And that's the parable. And the analog is, in other words, you see something negative in somebody, you see something negative in yourself, don't just say, oh, this is negative and it's there permanently. No, take it and develop it into something beautiful, right? Chosn and Kala, they're in this space together for 7 days, and they're seeing each other's flaws, and they're saying, we're going to make this into something beautiful. And the Mishnah says, Re'uyin kol Yisrael le'shev b'sukkah achat, all the Jews are fit to sit in one sukkah. You know, all you have to do is look at any newspaper today and see how much strife there is amongst us, right? This one is blaming this one is blaming this one is blaming this one. Can you imagine all of us being in one sukkah, right? All the different communities, the Charedim, the Tel Avivim, the Sfardim, the Ashkenazim, the Teimanim, right? The Ethiopians.
That's just like a Numan.
A Numan, right? It's sort of like a Numan, right? So the pshat is, Re'uyin, we are fit to achieve this. We are fit to be in one sukkah. We're fit to achieve this. We're fit to make each other's flaw become something beautiful. We have that capability. Is it easy? No. But that's the capability that we've been given. And before the verse of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow like yourself, it says, Hocheach tochiach et amitecha, you shall surely rebuke your fellow. Which normally means you see somebody doing something wrong, you have an opportunity to stop them, you have to rebuke them and stop them from doing it. Hocheach tochiach also translates as prove your friend. Prove to him that his negative quality can be something beautiful. And you know what it takes to be able to do that? It takes the Ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You have to have a lot of love for that person, right? Here's my friend Aryeh. He's working with a kid now that day and night he's working to take certain character traits and turn them into something positive. True? Right? And that takes a lot of caring and a lot of love to do that. It takes a tremendous amount of love to actually do that for another person. Okay? And that's what, that's the story of the Parsha. Bereishit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. God created the heavenly souls and created the earthly souls. God created Cain, God created Hebel. Right? God created a world that is not perfect. It's perfect and it's not perfect. And he put us into this world, la'asot, to do. Okay? That's one of the essential ideas, essential lessons of this week's parsha. Right? La'asot is to do.
Olam Asiyah.
Huh?
Olam Asiyah.
Olam ha'asiyah is the world of action. It's the world in which we're here to do. We're here to like Judy says, to partner with Hashem in making the world into a better world. Just you got to be careful not to lose your patience, because what we're facing today. I remember when I was still a student in university. It was like the very early 70s, and somebody said in the cafeteria, "Anti-Semitism is over." And I said to him, "Halavai." Right? 25 years ago, if you would ask the wise people of Israel, of Chelm, do you think that in 25 years from now you're going to have to face all this anti-Semitism again? Most people would say, no way, no way, no way, So one more thing, and this is very important. So I noticed that you were reading Rashi. So you read the first Rashi on the Parsha. Rashi starts his teaching with a teaching from his father. Omer Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, the Torah should have begun with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. The Torah should have begun with the first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people, the mitzvah of sanctifying the new moon. So why does it begin with the stories of Bereishit? Sure, you want to know that the world was created by God and so on, but the Torah is a book of instructions telling us who, what, and where, and who your ancestors were. Would make a nice addendum or a nice appendix to the Torah, right? So why does the Torah begin with Bereishit? So he says, now remember, Rashi lived during the Crusades. There's a little narrow street in France with a stone wall that has an indent in the wall, and the story is that a crusader was charging down that narrow street to attack Rashi's mother. She was pregnant with Rashi at the time, and she pressed herself into the wall, and miraculously, she was very pregnant, and miraculously the stones made space. There's that landmark still, to this day, and they say that's the legend behind that stone wall with the impression of her belly. In any case, whether you take it literally or not, that doesn't matter. The point is that Rashi lived during the Crusades. So Rashi's father says that should the Gentiles come and say to you, "Listimatem, you are thieves, you stole the land of the 7 nations, so Israel doesn't really belong to you. So you should know that Bereishit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. God created heaven and earth. It all belongs to God. And until a certain point, God gave it to the 7 nations, and then Hashem gave it to you permanently. And therefore, it is yours." So why that still doesn't explain why does the Torah begin with this, right? Because so what I'm going to say, it doesn't fully explain it either. But basically, you've heard the expression "might makes right," right? And what the Christians were claiming against Judaism is that Christianity replaced Judaism. As a matter of fact, the early Christians did not call themselves Christians, they called themselves the New Hebrews. Okay?
It's replacement theology, right?
As a replacement. They didn't call their testament by any other name other than the New Testament. And their proof of right was the fact of all the power that they had gained. And the continued existence of the Jewish people was a real problem for them. Because here were these people that you were supposed to have replaced, and they're still here.
And they're still Jews.
And they're still here as Jews.
Behaving as Jews.
They're behaving as Jews, and they're still here as Jews. Right? And that's why to this day, the church spends over $30 million a year just to get Jews to become Christians. They invest more money in getting a Jew to become a Christian than they do with any other people. There's a guy in here, haven't heard from him in years. He's a righteous convert, and he works for Yad L'Achim. And
What country is this?
and he used to be a missionary.
Which country?
Here, he's here. He used to be a missionary before he converted. And he told me that the church took him for special training on how to missionize to the Jews. Because he was successful in his missionizing, and they gave him special training on how to speak to the Jews and so on. In any case, so Rashi wrote his commentary for children. Rashi says, that he comes to explain the texts very simply, and for Ben Sheish, Pshutosh Mikra. So Rashi is writing for the children, and the children in those days were hearing very often. They were hearing the Christians and the Crusaders saying, "You guys were right at a certain point in history, but you're no longer right. You've been replaced." And in the same way that you took Israel from the 7 nations, so now you no longer are entitled to it. You were entitled to it because you deserved it then. Now you're no longer entitled to it, and you've been replaced. So Rashi's father teaches, the Torah begins with Bereishit bara Elokim. Know that it's all God's, and that when we deserve, we get to come home and be in Eretz Yisrael. And like the Lubavitch Rebbe kept on saying again and again to the leadership of Israel, tell the world the real reason why we're in Israel, and that's because Hashem is the creator of the world, and Hashem gave us Eretz Yisrael, and this is our land, and we don't even have any right to give anything away. So we should be blessed with knowing who we are, and having the courage to stand up, to be who we're meant to be, and to speak honestly to the world and tell the world, Bereishit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. God is the master.
Amen.
Good Shabbos,
Amen.
everybody. Good Shabbos.
So
Huh?
Rosh Hashanah,
So that's the sheet.
when it's lost, so to do, right? And then we're talking about what we were learning on Shabbos morning, right? About how you're supposed to do everything with simcha.
Right?
So is that the commentary of Lasa?
Well, let's put it this way. when are all your faculties working best? When you're
Simcha.
by simcha.
After he drinks.
Having a l'chaim.
He's
I'm on my way there.
he's a chassid.